This episode is brought to you by Absolute Landscapes. Absolute Landscapes is a landscape maintenance company that focuses heavily on commercial property maintenance. Call today for information about the services we provide and how we can best help you. 803-427-5944.
So yeah, I'm really excited about this conversation, man. If you want to introduce yourself and just kind of preface the conversation, maybe say who you are, what you do, anything that you're willing to share related to
Mhm.
the conversation.
Thank you, Cody. We're going to have such an amazing conversation
For
today.
sure.
I have been looking forward to this, and it's going to be glorious. So, who am I? Well, my name is Vanessa Cardenas, and I am a betrayal recovery specialist. Let me put it this way. Nobody studies betrayal unless they've actually gone through it. And I did. You see, I have to go back. I have to go back quite a ways. I was addicted to certainty. I thought that if I checked off all the right boxes, that I would be inoculated from anything terrible happening to me. I really did. I went to a good school. I got a good degree. I got a good job. I married my junior high school sweetheart, and we lived what I thought was happily ever after. I had two beautiful children, the house, the picket fence, the cars, money in the bank. I checked it all off. I was supposed to be inoculated from anything terrible happening to me. And one day, my husband and I are walking through Central Park, and I'm people watching, and I'm just so enjoying the crispness in the air and holding his hand and just feeling so good. I really was. And my husband, pulls me down onto a bench, and says, Vanessa, I need to tell you something. And I remember it so distinctly because when you go through something traumatic, time slows down. And I just remember turning to look at him, smiling, and he looked at me and said, I've met someone. And my whole world shattered in an instant. It's like if you ever watched the Marvel movies with Thanos and he snaps his fingers and half the population turns to dust. That's what I felt like. I felt like I suddenly just completely disappeared. I shattered into a billion pieces. I could not believe the depths of darkness that I fell into. And I was a shell of myself, not for days, for weeks, for months. I just could not pull myself out of this cesspool that I had pushed myself into. Never mind my husband pushing me into it, but I had lived there. I had stayed there for far too long. And I remember a moment in time, it was distinctive to me. And again, you have those pivotal moments in your life that you remember because time just slows down. I was laying on my bedroom floor, and I have a wood grain floor, and I remember looking at the wood grain through the tears. And when I talk about crying, I'm talking about ugly crying, the sobs and the snot and just the hyperventilating. And I couldn't get out of how I felt. And at that moment in time, I just begged God, source, spirit, anybody, please, if I can get a reprieve from feeling the way that I feel, I would help somebody else. And I, I was smart. I was a smart woman. I went to college. I have a psychology degree. Why is this happening to me? And I fell into that pity party and just not understanding why. Why was this happening? And that moment in time where I begged and pleaded, I finally passed out, fell asleep, and I slept more than I had slept in months. And I woke up and I felt a little better. And then the next day I felt a little better. And by the third day I felt a little better. And then I felt the shove. You made a promise. You made a promise that if you got a reprieve, that you would kick it into high gear and help somebody else. And that's exactly what I did. I sought out all of the greats related to betrayal, related to infidelity, and I read all their books, went to all their workshops, and I picked and chose all the little things that made the world to me, that made the difference. It could be one line in a book that just, for me, snapped. And I was like, oh, yes, yes, yes. Now I understand that. And the pivotal moment for me is when I recognized I had heard it before. But again, when you're going through betrayal, those first days and weeks, everybody around you is wah, 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 wah. That's all. You don't hear anything because you're so absorbed in how you're feeling.
Right.
And it was something that was said early on that I just couldn't comprehend. And then later on, with wisdom and knowledge, you'll hear it again and you're like, yeah, that's it. That's it. And what it was though something terrible had happened to me, it wasn't about me. It truly wasn't about me. And once I had that pivot, that's when everything changed for me. And it really became the moment when I knew that I couldn't do this alone, that I actually needed a support system around me of people not just meaning well, because yes, your friends and family, they mean well, but sometimes they just don't know the right thing to say.
Right.
And sometimes you need those people around you, whether it's a support group or going to a workshop with others that have been betrayed, or getting that mentor, that specialist, that coach who has gone through it, has gone through the fire and can help you through it, can be a guide to guide you through. And once I made that connection of I need somebody. I can't do this alone. I'm smart, everything else, but I actually need somebody else. And that was the pivotal moment for me. And when she said those words that I had already read in a book of, though it happened to you, it wasn't about you.
Mm-hmm.
That was the pivotal change for me. And that was years ago. And I got through to the other side of betrayal. And I am a beautiful example of what is actually possible on the other side. Most of my clients, most of my participants in any of the workshops I do, those that listen to anytime I'm a featured guest, when I mention that I am still married to my husband, they are very taken back by that. Yes, we got through. We together got through to the other side of betrayal. And I am so grateful. And that's an odd statement. A lot of people cannot believe that. I am grateful. Why? I'm actually better for the experience. My marriage is better for the experience. My family is better for the experience. Now, don't get me wrong. Please don't misunderstand me. I am not advocating or indicating that betrayal is the be all end all to save marriages.
Mm-hmm.
No. Not at all. Not at all. We are very much an exception. And I hold that very, very dear. But when I work with clients, it's not about whether you choose to stay or you choose to dissolve your marriage. What it is having the clarity to make that choice, to have that choice, and to live in that choice, and to be comfortable with that choice. And that's a difficult decision to make. And I'll tell you this, I was on the pendulum. I'm going to go. I'm going to stay. I'm going to go.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to stay. And for 6 months, I was bouncing back and forth like a ping pong ball. I couldn't decide because I didn't have the clarity. I didn't have the clarity to know what I wanted. And it was really about me. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
In that moment in time, deciding whether to stay or to go, that was about me.
So there's a lot there that I want to touch on, but I appreciate you sharing that. Also, one hell of an intro. That was fantastic. So the things that you were explaining there is kind of something that I think we hear a lot when people talk about betrayal and infidelity is that, there's this, when we're with this person or we trust this person, there's a sense of identity that we have with, we have this life, we have this identity, we think that we know what our life is. But then when something like this happens, what I hear is that a lot of people, it's like that sense of self or identity is just like shattered. It's just like the question comes up, well, like, who are you? I didn't even know, I thought I knew who you were, but now, who you are and everything we had in the life we had before this is just kind of, what was it, a lie? Did I not know? And so as you're talking, that I think that's something that really resonates with a lot of people, is that sense of, that self is fractured almost. Everything that I think I don't know exactly how you worded it, but I think you said something along the lines of everything that the life you had up to that point was disappeared. I think is something you said, something like that. And so I think that's a pretty common thing. But I think by betrayal, like, I think that's the definition. We trust a person and we think we have this thing with this person and we think we know them. And then something like this happens and is I think you use the right word, traumatic. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely is. We lose our sense of self. We don't know who we are anymore. And we definitely don't know our partner anymore. They're a complete stranger. And they're a stranger in our bed. They're a stranger in our house. And we immediately go to a place in our minds where we start playing our entire relationship on repeat over and over and over again. Because what are we doing? We're looking for those red flags. How come I didn't see it? In my particular case, I didn't see it. I was completely blindsided by it. I had no inkling whatsoever. Some women and some men, they get little tidbits. There are little things that you can look out for to kind of see, oh, wait a second. The first one, the number one, this is it, I'm going to give it to you, is the phone. We have become, as a society, so addicted to our phone. It's a dopamine hit. We swipe up, we swipe left. We have become warriors with our thumbs because we can text off something really quick, or we can swipe left, swipe right, swipe up, swipe down. We can be dismissive that way just with our thumbs. So our phones become a block, almost a screen between partners. And when your partner becomes very secretive with their phone, they're tilting their phone away. They're always holding on to it. It's got, a thumbprint to get into it. They have got a passcode on it that you don't know. They jump the moment that it beeps. That's usually indicative of something's kind of going on there. Pay attention, see what's happening.
I agree.
Where they don't want to hand you their phone. They see something funny on screen and they hand it to you with such trepidation, like, oh my God, don't swipe anymore in the photos. Just look at the photo that I've given you. Don't swipe, kind of thing. That's usually indicative of something's going on a little bit under the surface. But we also have to talk about the different forms of betrayal, because again, everybody's relationship is completely unique. What might be acceptable in one relationship might not be acceptable in another relationship. For example, and this is a very taboo topic, porn. Some couples, no. Other couples, their degrees. And that's why there's names for porn. There's soft porn, hardcore porn, and then there's a whole spectrum in between. Similar to movies, we had G, we had PG, depending on your age. We have PG-13, then we have R, and then we have X-rated movies. So there are tiers of that. Same thing in porn. We have those spectrum that people are on, and different relationships have different acceptances, provided that both partners are aware and they're consensual, that they understand that. So if one partner is secretly watching porn, knowing that it's going to upset the other partner, you've got an issue there. There's something to discuss. And what I advocate for is a responsible relationship. Not only having a loving relationship, but having a responsible relationship. What does that mean? It means that you have that level of trust where you're able to communicate, and communication is key in any relationship, where you're able to express your thoughts, your feelings, what you would like in your relationship. Because there's a lot of things that can easily be hidden because we're afraid to talk, to say how we feel about a certain topic. So we're back to the topic of betrayal. There are different types. There could be physical, you actually engaged, you've exchanged bodily fluids with another person. Then there's emotional betrayal. Emotional betrayal is confiding in someone else about how you feel that you don't share with your partner. And you fall into this emotional relationship with another person. And that's emotional betrayal. Then you have micro betrayal. And the micro is these little things. They're really subtle. They're very little, but compounded over time, yeah, they can turn into something. What is that? What is the micro betrayal, micro cheating? That's flirting. That's liking some picture on Instagram of some girl in a bikini. It's, liking some man without his shirt on, like. Again, we become thumb warriors.
Yep.
And sometimes our thumbs can get us into trouble, especially if we don't have a responsible relationship with our partner. So we have the micro cheating as well. Then you have cyber cheating, and that is the Pornhub, that's the OnlyFans, that's getting into that realm. Again, depends on your relationship. If you and your partner, again, have that responsibility to each other where you communicate that you would like in your relationship, and again, both parties agree, then that might be acceptable to you, but it's not acceptable to another relationship.
Right.
So that's why when you're going through betrayal, and if you have discussed it with other people, your friends and your family, which I don't advocate for. I think that once you take the toothpaste out of the tube, you can't get it back. So suddenly you have all this judgment around you of people in your circles telling you all kinds of things. And they might tell you things related to their relationship that they want to impose on you. For example, we circle back to the porn. If you and your partner are absolutely, nope, that's great for your relationship. But in speaking to somebody else, they might say, oh, that's no big deal. Wait a second, don't minimize my standards, my integrity, my relationship, because your relationship is different. And that's what a lot of betrayed partners feel. They feel the judgment from everyone else because, again, everyone else is imposing their ideals, their standards, their relationship on your relationship. And that's why I really advocate, especially the first couple of days, weeks, months, to keep it under wraps. And I know that's really difficult, especially as the betrayed. You want to scream it from the mountaintops. Right. You want to take, I think Kelly Clarkson said it best, a Louisville slugger to both headlights. You want to take out that rage. And yes, that rage is normal. It's absolutely normal to have. But once you let it out, once you let the genie out of the bottle, can't put her back in there. So you really, really want to be careful with who you share it with that supports you, that doesn't add to the shame and guilt that you feel. And you feel it. You do. It's not appropriate. I'll let you know that. Because again, although this was done to you, it wasn't about you. So the shame and guilt that you might be feeling, no. It's not yours to hold on to. Your partner did this. You didn't do this. There's no blame or shame or guilt to be put on you. Do we take it on? Oh, absolutely. We wear it like a coat. Very, very much so. It's normal. It's normal to do that. But when you start working through the betrayal, through the recovery, it's to take off the coat, to shed the coat, to let it be the responsibility of where the responsibility needs to be.
So I want to kind of break this apart a little bit. First, let me back up just a little bit. You were talking about the red flags. There's a principle, or I don't know if it even has a name, but I've heard people talk about, as you're falling in love with someone, you kind of ignore something psychologically happens in your brain that you ignore these things that should be red flags. And so, if you've ever, had a relationship with somebody, you've fallen in love with them, and then, years later you look back and say, man, why did I allow those things in the beginning of this? It really makes a lot of sense. Okay, but so what we're talking about right now, the types of betrayal. First of all, I love that you start this off with this, because I think it's important to know, we have to be able to identify and define what betrayal is. And so I think this is a really good way to start this. I want to say that everything that we talked about up to this point, I agree with you on. Like all these things I agree with. And the reason I'm saying that is because what I'm about to say can sometimes come across as contentious, and I don't really intend it to be. But when we talk about types of betrayal, I think the physical betrayal, I think that's obvious. I think, unless a couple has an agreement where, they're open with other people, whatever, again, that's something that, like you said, is specific to the couple. If that's something that they're okay with, that's the relationship, whatever, it doesn't matter. But I think most people can agree that physical betrayal is something that is not okay. And the way you put this, well, let's just take an example, social media. And so, yes, the physical betrayal, that's a thing. Okay, we could put that aside for now. But I think what a lot of people don't realize is if you are putting yourself either on social media or in an environment or around people where you are either getting validation from somebody or giving validation to somebody, I don't understand how people don't see that as a form of betrayal. And so a really good example of this to kind of really drive this home is, let's say, if you're with a person, or if a person is with somebody and they say whatever they need from the relationship, they have their needs, whatever it is, trust, communication, whatever. So my thing is, and I think you mentioned this, if you claim that you need communication from your partner, but then you go and get communication from another person about that aspect, how is that not betrayal? How do we not see that as betrayal when you clearly stated this is something that you needed? And I think where people get mixed up with this, going back to the social media thing, is when I talk about, I think that men and women react differently on social media. I think that, there's a lot more men interacting with women's photos and things like that on social media than vice versa. And I think that's just because, and I don't mean to generalize here, but I think mostly it's the man that pursues the relationship rather than the woman. Sometimes it's the woman, and that's okay. It doesn't matter. But I'm just saying, if it's the man pursuing the woman, whether it's on social media or in a bar or in a gym or whatever, I think that we can all agree that's not okay. And the contentious part comes in when I say that if a woman puts herself in that environment to be pursued by a man, that is also the same thing. Because I think a lot of women want to say, well, as long as I reject him or deny him or whatever, that's what I'm supposed to do. I mean, yes, that's true. But if you're putting yourself in an environment where that is almost guaranteed to happen, I mean, I don't see how that's not the same as a man pursuing. And, social media is kind of a tricky one, because that's not the point of social media. People don't create social media accounts just get hit on. That's just seems to be a symptom of guys who think that Facebook is Tinder. I don't know. But places like a nightclub is almost, I mean, you're almost certainly to get hit on at a nightclub. If you're a woman, you're almost certain to get hit on at a nightclub. And so this is something that I say that I think is a little contentious at times, because it's like, oh, well, are you concerned about your woman getting hit on in public? It's like, it's not that. It's if it is the man who most of the time pursues the relationship, and it is the woman who is being pursued, and if she is in a place where she is likely to be pursued, then how does that not contribute to the man pursuing? Am I making sense here? And again, I'm not trying to start up a contentious conversation here, but I don't see how we can label one thing and say that this other thing is not, because let's just be honest here. I don't think that people realize that most men are not pursued the way that women are. Most men are not hit on the way that women are.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's hard for us to understand, like and here, we're talking about heterosexual couples. I think it's hard to kind of understand like where both sides are coming from.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, if I haven't lost you already, with that being said, this is I think the explanation with this social media thing. Because if I'm in a committed relationship with someone and our agreement is that we're not going to be involved with anyone else, and I go on social media and I interact with these women's photos, liking or commenting or whatever, first of all, it's embarrassing for the woman that I'm with, because everybody can see your activity online, and then it's giving this woman validation for whatever the picture or whatever it was. And so I see that as wrong. And then I also think that, like I said, if you say that to your partner that you need communication or whatever, and you go outside of your partner for that, I think that's the same to me, that's the same thing as the physical betrayal.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know I'm on a long-winded kind of explanation here, but I'm not saying communication like any form of communication. I'm saying if you need a specific communication from your partner about the relationship and you go to another person for that, I mean, that maybe that's not infidelity, but by definition, that's betrayal.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I don't know. Maybe I should let you talk. I don't know if I'm making sense here or not.
Well, you're absolutely making sense, because it is so messy. It really is messy. And the one word that popped out when you spoke was about clearly communicating. And that's where we as humans sometimes fall short, is that we think that we're communicating. We think that the other person, in essence, can read our mind.
Mm-hmm.
Think of it this way. Woman walks into the kitchen. Ooh. And she says out loud, ooh, the garbage smells. And the husband sitting at the counter goes, yeah, it does. Nothing else. And then she subtly says, well, I think the garbage needs to go out. Pause. He says, yeah, you're right. She's now getting frustrated because she's thinking, why aren't you doing this? So then she says, or she walks over to the garbage to start pulling the garbage can out. He suddenly realizes that she's doing something about it. He jumps up and says, oh no, I'll take care of that. So that's one scenario. The next scenario, same scenario. She walks into the kitchen. Ooh, the garbage smells. He says nothing. She then, trying to get a reaction. I think the garbage needs to go out. He says nothing. Then she says his name, because our names are the most beautiful word in the English language, unless it's said a little harshly. But then she says, for example, Rich, can you take out the garbage? Oh, yeah. And then he jumps up. Exact same scenario, almost the same words, but how we communicate and how we're heard really comes into play. I'm going to give you a beautiful example of this. So after my betrayal and after going through a lot of recovery work, and again, my husband did a lot of heavy lifting for our marriage. And then he did a lot of heavy lifting for himself. I, on the other hand, did a lot of heavy lifting for myself first. And then I focused on my marriage. So we were a few years out and my husband took me to Paris. I had never been there. We had already been married 30 years and we went for our 30th anniversary. So we went to Paris. And I love taking photographs. I absolutely do. I love taking them for my Instagram account. I love taking them for my camera scroll. I just adore taking photographs. And we're in the city of love. And every, 2 steps, 3 steps, I'm stopping to take a photograph or a series of photographs or a video or whatnot. Now, my husband is not a PDA. He is not a public display of affection. He never has been. That's fine. I already know that about him. Well, as I'm taking pictures and whatnot, I feel him grab my hand, and then he's holding my hand and he's kind of pulling me along. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm not a child. Why is he treating me like a child by holding my hand? I want to stop and take a photo and this and that. And I found myself getting irritated. So we sat down for dinner, and he, rightfully so, noticed that something was off with me. And he says, Vanessa, what's going on? You seem, really, And I said, I don't like the fact that you're treating me like a child. And he looks around, and he almost thinks I'm not talking to him. And he goes, what are you talking about? And I said, yeah, you're holding my hand and you're pulling me along. I want to stop and take pictures. Why are you treating me like a child? And he chuckled, which of course, no woman when she's angry wants her man to chuckle. But
Right.
he chuckles and he says, Vanessa, we're in the city of love. Everybody around us is holding hands. He goes, I wanted to hold your hand to let you know that I love you, that I'm so grateful that we are here, that what we have been through, that we can come to the city of love on our 30th wedding anniversary. He says, I can't believe you saw it that way. He says, I'm so sorry that you saw it that way. But you see how an act, a thing of just grabbing my hand and holding my hand, I already had these preconceived ideas in my head. He never holds my hand. He's never held my hand. So why would he start now? And, he's preventing me from taking photos because now I'm so preoccupied with the fact that he's holding my hand. And that, I remember him holding our children's hands whenever, they kind of wandered off or anything like that. And he saw it as everybody else is around us holding hands. Let me hold my wife's hand. Let me show the rest of the world she's mine. She's mine. And that's what I'm talking about in terms of communicating clearly. Now, had we not talked about it, had he not picked up on the fact that something was up, maybe it would have taken me a day or two to kind of like finally blurt it out, like, why are you treating me like a child? Because I didn't want to ruin our vacation by being upset about it, so I was trying to hold it in, but of course it seeps out. But it's the communication part. When you see your partner struggling with something, ask. And yes, most of the times it might be you. It absolutely will. But we have to learn to communicate with each other. And that also involves not using defensive words. And this is something that I do in my practice. Defensive words are always, never, or it gets disguised sometimes in situations of never and but. So it goes like this. You always watch TV. Well, your partner will be like, well, wait a second. No, I wasn't watching TV when you got home, so I'm not always watching TV. Or the other one is, you never do anything. Well, wait a second. No, I just did something, anything type of thing. Those become defensive words because we, as humans, we pick up on those words. And especially after you've been betrayed, there are certain words that you really pick up on. So you want to be careful with your language, but you absolutely want to communicate because silence, either one can be misconstrued as acceptance. Your silence is acceptance of the situation. Or your silence could be an absolute relationship killer, in that if you do not communicate your wants, your needs, then your partner is left guessing what they think you want. And that was a very, very hard lesson for me because I just felt like after 25 years, 20 years of marriage, my husband should know me. He should know exactly how I feel about everything and anything. That's not true. It's absolutely not true because I'm not using my words. So you need to use your words in a relationship and communicate with your partner. You know what? Now that we're in a responsible relationship, I don't want you liking other girls' Instagram posts. You're right. Just as you said, Cody, it starts to erode the self-esteem. And what we are to each other, what we are to our partner, and what our partner should be to us. And I know should is a very kind of word, but in any event, what we should be to each other is caretakers to each other's confidence. Because I can tell you this, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Cody, and your audience can absolutely jump in on the comment section about this. The most beautiful, beautiful attribute about a woman is her confidence. The most beautiful, handsome attribute about a male is his confidence. We need to be caretakers to each other's confidence. We need to validate each other, because then if we don't, we're each looking for that validation outside of our relationship. Now our relationship is not responsible because we're not responsible for each other. We're now looking outside of our relationship for that validation, for that confidence, to boost our self-esteem, to give us meaning.
Right. Yeah. So just to kind of close the loop before we could move on from the communication thing, one thing I was thinking about, like you were telling your story, and that was a beautiful story, by the way. I'm glad you guys. I'm almost glad you had that experience, because I feel like maybe had you not had that experience, maybe the communication wouldn't have progressed to a degree after that, if that makes any sense. Something that I was kind of alluding to earlier, you hear these stories, and I don't know if you, with anybody in your practice, if you've heard this kind of thing or not. Well, first of all, let me ask you about your practice. Do you work mostly with men or mostly with women, or is it kind of a mix, or
What a great question. I love this question, because when I started out, I thought I would be working with women. I'm a woman. It's a similar type of mindset that I had. And I don't mean to be too graphic. It's, some women aren't comfortable going to a male gynecologist, because he doesn't know what those things feel like. He doesn't know what childbirth feels like. So I had this preconceived idea that I would be working with women because I know what it feels like to be betrayed. So I can speak to that. Well, one day my husband and I were in a gallery. One of my friends was showing pieces of work, and I come into the gallery and my friend runs up to me, Vanessa, you're here. And she pulls in this other couple and she goes, oh my gosh, you have to meet Vanessa. She has the most amazing job. She is a betrayal recovery specialist. And then she hears her name. I hear her name being called from another side of the gallery, and she leaves. And she leaves us in front of this couple, John and Joan. And he looks to the floor immediately. Joan gets white as a sheet. Oh my goodness. She could not wait to get away from me and my husband. Oh, she was gone, leaving John. And I shooed my husband away. I'm like, you got to go get me a drink or something. So it's me and John, and we're standing looking at this piece of art. And when you go to a gallery, you're supposed to look at the art and just kind of stand there and, and make what I refer to as idle chit chat with everybody around us. Well, I didn't say a word because I could feel something brewing in him. And about after 8-10 minutes, he clears his throat and he says, do you work with men? And I paused. I actually really paused for a moment. And I remember it so distinctly. Why not? And I said, I can. And he said, how do I find you? And, first he asked me for a business card, but I'm not one with business cards. If you want my service, you'll find me. And I said, it's understandingear.com. You can find me. And off we went, my husband and I, blah, blah, blah. The next day, my phone rings. Silence on the other end of the phone. And then sobbing. Just sobbing. And finally clears his throat and says, I need help. You have to keep in mind, at this point, I didn't know whether he was betrayed or the betrayer. Because yes, some betrayers fall into depths of just self-destroying. Like, how could I do this to my wife, to my family? I've destroyed everything. My world is falling apart. I mean, they suffer as well with betrayal when they're the betrayer, as well as being betrayed. In this particular case, he was the one that was betrayed. And he and I worked together for 18 months. And I know that sounds like a really long duration of time, but we needed to get him to the point where he could have the clarity to decide whether to stay or to leave his relationship. He needed to make that choice. He, John, decided that he was going to leave. Then we went into the dating realm, how to date after betrayal, because we are so wounded and we are just so hurt and we turtle in and we want to be careful with those around us, how to navigate the dating scene, which is difficult in and of itself if you don't even add the component of betrayal in there. And then finding somebody and then being able to learn the communication skills to be able to communicate that vulnerability. And then my husband and I went to his wedding, and it went full circle because then he was the one introducing me to the people around us. Oh my gosh, you have to meet Vanessa. She's a betrayal recovery specialist. And then off he went. It was such an amazing thing for me. And it really opened up my world to the perspective from the male point of view, because in working with John, I needed to make sure that I was skilled enough to be able to communicate with him and help him through the process. And since then, it's about 50-50 that I've been helping 50% male, 50% women as well. And then recently, I started working with couples. And I purposely hadn't done that, but actually one of my female clients asked for me to work with her husband. And then working with them kind of parallel to each other, I suggested that the three of us start meeting together, which we have been, which has been very, very interesting, which I do appreciate the opportunity to be that resource and to help people through and guide them through.
Okay. So the reason I was asking that, I don't know if there's a female equivalent of this or not, but I've heard, you hear stories about men hiring prostitutes just to talk to them, just to, voice something to them that they feel like they can't talk to their partner. And I don't know if there's a female equivalent of this. But to kind of tie my early point home is that I feel like that is betrayal. If you hire a person to communicate in a way that you either wish you could or desire to communicate with your partner, I mean, that is still betrayal.
Let's be careful there, Cody. I'm gonna pull on that thread because it really kind of depends. If you're hiring someone to talk to, that could be a therapist, that could be a coach,
Right.
that could be a mentor. And hopefully that person that you have enlisted help with will talk you through how to actually communicate with your partner.
Right.
Because that's the ultimate goal, is how to talk to your partner. Now, sometimes in relationships, partners aren't receptive to the communication that they're getting. They're not hearing their partner and what their partner's saying, and therefore their partner's getting frustrated with, but I've told you this, And again, it depends on how we communicate with each other. So if somebody is hiring somebody with the sole purpose of talking to get their message across and share with me how I can communicate this to my partner, then that's a good thing. If they're hiring somebody, and again, a lot of high-end escort workers do talk about this phenomenon of being hired just to caretake the man's confidence, to be seen out in public with a beautiful woman on his arm to an event or whatever it might be, and just have that experience of that person across the table paying attention to them, and then going up to the room, nothing sexual, just unleashing all these things that he needs to talk about. Yes, that is absolutely betrayal, without a doubt.
Mhm.
Yes, where there's no sex involved, the caretaking of his confidence and wanting this experience, like the girlfriend experience, that's still betrayal. Now,
Right.
again, if you're in a responsible relationship and you're talking to your partner and you're saying, hey, I need this, I'm not getting this from you at this moment in time. Can we go to counseling? Can we learn how to facilitate this so that my needs are met, your needs are met, our needs are met? That's healthy. But if we're doing it on the side and on the sly and not communicating it, that's betrayal.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree with that. So I guess maybe the way I should say it is, well, I mean, the motivation is going to play a big part in it. First of all, I don't know anything about how much an escort service is or whatever, but I would imagine I have paid for therapy at points in my life before, and I would imagine that therapy is probably significantly cheaper than, like an hour and for therapy for versus an hour. I would imagine it's significantly cheaper. But the motivation, I think, is what I think is the thing that makes this different. Because yes, I agree. If a person, if they go to a therapist and they say, hey, how can I communicate this better? This is the problem I'm having, whatever. How can you help me do this? I think that's very different from going to an escort service or person and getting communication in a way that sexually validates you, even maybe it's not, even though it's maybe not sexually, or like we talked about earlier, builds your confidence. If they want this person to communicate with them in a way that makes them feel more cared for, I mean, I would imagine they talk to the escort person much differently than they would talk to a therapist. I would imagine,
Right.
you don't expect, these things from the, I mean, we're talking about apples and oranges here. So yeah, I agree with that. I think the motivation is key. It's the reason why they're there is key. But I mean, yeah. So I mean, there's all different kinds of betrayal. Like, and I mean, I think again, it goes to the relationship. It goes to the person, the specific person. Um, Something I wanted to ask you about. This kind of maybe leads us into this. So this may be a very deep rabbit hole. I don't know, but the reasons for betrayal. I mean, if they're ever, I don't want to say, I want to be careful here because I don't want to imply that I'm saying excuses exist, but I'm saying the reasons that people say are, is because I feel like people who are betrayed, oftentimes what we ask is, how could they do this to me? Why would they do this to me? And I know you mentioned earlier, this isn't about you. This isn't about the person who was betrayed. This is the person who did the betrayal. So, and when I say reasons, I'm not asking like, why do these people say, oh, I did this to you for this? I'm saying, since it's not about you, if you were betrayed, since it's not about you, it's about the other person. What is going on with this other person? What is the reason they're doing this? I mean, are we talking about, I guess there's 1,000 things that we could say, sexual addiction, or, just, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. So just in your experience, not in your experience, in your expertise and kind of the people you work with, what do you see? Like, what's a driving force that causes these people to do this?
Good question. But I'm going to answer it from a personal perspective first before I jump into
Mm-hmm.
my clients. In my particular case, when my husband said those 3 words, I've met someone, he didn't anticipate my reaction. I turned into a Karen 100 times over. I was screaming at him in Central Park. How I was not arrested, oh, beyond me. I completely unleashed on him. And he rightfully, and I say that in quotations, turtled. He didn't say anything else. He could
Mm-hmm.
not believe my reaction. And going through counseling and therapy, it was discovered months later that the reason that he said those 3 words to me was because he got the affection of another woman. And he liked the way it felt, but he didn't want it from her. He wanted it from me. And
Okay.
he didn't know how to communicate that to me, that we had been married for so long. We felt into comfort. It was just comfortable, and it was just the way it is. And, we talked about house management and we micromanaged our household and we micromanaged our marriage, but we fell out of that intoxication that you have when you first fall in love and you get those butterflies in your stomach and you can't wait to see each other and you get all dressed up when you go out and whatnot. And suddenly, as years pass by and the kids and everything else, suddenly you're in a t-shirt and sweatpants. And, maybe you keep your hair up in a ponytail all day long and whatnot. And you lose touch of who you both are to each other. And in my particular case, his revelation of meeting someone else was actually a cry for help of pay attention to me. Pay attention to me. Yes, you caretake my confidence, which is good, and I caretake yours. And we have on the surface a really great relationship, but I don't have that intoxication anymore and I want it back. I know it's available because this other woman is paying attention to me and I like the way it feels, but I don't want it from her. I want it from you. And that was a very big revelation. So from a personal perspective, sometimes it's trying to get the attention of your partner and just being like, woohoo, here I am, pay attention to me. Somebody else is paying attention to me, but I want you to pay attention to me. The other thing, which is really, really unfortunate, and again, this circles back to communication, is that the partner wants out. That the partner, in fact, wants out of the relationship. They just don't know how to say it. So they figure, I'm going to break your heart. I'm going to betray you. It's the most, outrageous thing that I can do, and you will let me go. And then they're surprised when their partner wants to hang on and go through counseling and do all of these things to rebuild and repair the marriage that the partner doesn't want. And it's a really harsh reality. And that's a lot of things that we go through when you're working with a specialist or a counselor about betrayal, is getting to that root. Do you really want to save this marriage? Or do you want out and you're just too chicken to say it? So you figure you'll break her heart, you'll break her spirit or his spirit, again, male or female, you'll break them down, you'll do the most horrific things so that they can cut you loose, so that you can save face in some respects of not leaving your family, not leaving your partner. And we have this new phenomenon that's going on now of ghosting. And then there's zombieing that's going on as well, which is, you ghost and then suddenly you reappear. And sometimes partners do that. They bounce back and forth between their partner and their affair partner. And again, think of the terminology that we use. Back in the 60s, it used to be mistress. Now it's affair partner. We associate the word partner with affair. And I'm like, we need to separate that word out because your partner is your partner.
Right.
Affair partner just gives them more credibility, but it's still the other person, and the other person that's going to cause all that angst within your relationship. So again, sometimes it's a cry for help, pay attention. Sometimes it's wanting out. Sometimes it's that validation, wanting to feel desired, especially when we get to a certain age where we see the time in front of us is shorter than the time behind us. And we're like, whoa, suddenly I don't have a lot of time. Let me see if I've still got it. And you talked about, women being able to go out and getting hit on. Men might want that as well. It depends on, again, the relationship and whether, it's acceptable. My husband and I used to joke before the betrayal, because jokes before the betrayal and jokes after the betrayal take on completely different meanings. But we used to, back when we were married 15, 18 years, we used to talk about how funny, and I say that in quotes, it would be for us to both go to a bar as if we didn't know each other, sit next to each other, and see how many people hit on one another. Because I've always been commenting to him that he's so attractive. He gets better with age, like wine. He's very distinguished looking and everything else. And I'm feeling my age. And I'm like, you're going to get hit on more than I am. And Stephanie's like, no. You're female. Any female is going to get hit on. And we used to always joke about that. Now it's not so funny, but in any event, it's that type of thing. And it really circles back to this responsible relationship that you need to have. You need to communicate. You need to draw those lines in the sand. And when I spoke about those words, never and always, there are other things. For example, in my wedding vows, it didn't say anything about Pornhub or OnlyFans or Instagram. I don't want you to like other women's photos. So when I screaming at my husband during therapy said, you broke our vows, he would return and say, what do you mean? I didn't break our vows. It didn't say that I couldn't do that. And in essence, he was right, because our vows didn't evolve with our marriage. Now, some people on Instagram are putting very funny things on Instagram about vows and a whole list of all the things you should or should not be doing. And it's humorous and we get a good laugh about it, but there is an element of truth to it, because we need to communicate those boundaries of our relationship. What is acceptable and what is not. And again, every relationship is different. So what your friends might be doing in their relationship might feel icky to you. And you'd be like, yeah, no, that's not comfortable for me. I'm not liking that. And again, both partners have to be in agreement, and both partners need to adhere to it. It can't be that one can do it and the other can't. It has to be mutually exclusive for both, and both have to agree to it. And they have to agree to it in advance of. You had mentioned about an open relationship. Well, an open relationship in marriage, if that's working for that particular couple, more power to them. That's great. However, if one thinks they're in an open relationship and the other one doesn't know they're in an open relationship, that's the problem. We want to have that mutual respect, that mutual understanding, and we want to communicate beforehand, not after the fact.
So the story that you're explaining sounds a lot to me like an emotional affair, like, wanting somebody to be there, wanting that either validation or respect or communication from another person. And again, another form of betrayal. And so what it sounds like here is like we have, there's obviously the physical, there's the emotional, and then there's maybe the communication or whatever. But I think what it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it kind of sounds like a driving factor for this is, the pinnacle of the umbrella is that this person feels like their needs are not getting met, whatever those needs are. And instead of just saying that to their partner, they're going out to another person and getting these things, whether it's sex or communication or, validation or whatever. And saying that, I am in no way whatsoever making an excuse for this person to commit the infidelity or to betray the person. I'm just trying to pinpoint what is the driving factor here. And this is another reason that like I'm such an advocate for, expressing and being able to talk openly with your partner. Because if you're in a relationship that you feel like you can't communicate whatever it is that you need, I just don't see how that's going to survive as a relationship. First of all, you're going to have to walk on eggshells around the person because you don't know what you can and say, what you can't say. And it's like nobody has time for that. Absolutely no person has time for that. And then you can't voice what it is that you need or desire from this relationship. And so I was just trying to pinpoint a common problem there. Yeah, you were talking about your vows and the social media and that kind of thing. I mean, I don't know, man. I think the world's changing at such a rate. It's hard for us to anticipate, what's going to be even in the next 5 years. I mean, let alone the next 10, 20, 30, So, but I think too, though, again, if we know where we're at from the beginning, it doesn't matter. To me, it doesn't matter what's going to come up or what's going to happen if we know, we're on the same page. So Listen, I tell you what, let's do this. Let's take a quick break really quick because I don't want the video to go over here. Let's just take a quick break really quick and we'll jump right back into this.
We're so full of information. Yes, getting back to your point about betrayal in general and just things move at the speed of light, especially now with social media and whatnot.
Mhm.
It really comes down to having a responsible relationship, being responsible for each other and for yourself, and communicating your needs, what you need, how you need it, why you need it. Because sometimes we need to start with the why,
Right.
Simon Sinek. But we definitely need to have the opportunity to express ourselves. I feel, I felt, I'm feeling, because you can never argue how somebody else is feeling. So
Mhm.
using feeling statements, I feel, I felt, I'm feeling, and communicating in a way that our partner can hear us. Back to that garbage example. We might think that we're speaking clearly when we're inferring what needs to be done. Sometimes our partner needs direct. And sometimes we are uncomfortable being direct because we think they should know us. They should absolutely
Right.
know us. That if we say the garbage smells, that they jump up and go throw out the garbage because that's what they do, is they're in charge of the garbage. I'm not implying that women can't take out the garbage, but for the sake of the example, we turn back around, and I stress it a lot about being responsible. Don't do something that, if you shift perspective and your partner would be doing, that you wouldn't be uncomfortable with. I hope I said that right. Let me try that again, if you don't mind. Don't do something that you'd be uncomfortable if your partner did.
Right.
If you're liking a woman's photo, would you like your woman to like a man's photo? Like, how would that make you feel? Just put yourself in your partner's shoes just for that brief moment, or if you're out with your friends and, somebody hits on you, graciously decline, go home and share it with your partner. Oh my gosh,
Mhm.
they really, stroked my ego, but, I'm all yours, type of thing. It's just how we communicate with each other, and we don't fall into that situation of just being too comfortable. We always have to work our relationships. We just do. And go back to dating, where it was that intoxication, where it felt so good to get dressed up, to be on the arm of your man, or for men, having that beautiful woman on your arm, and she's beautiful to you. That's what it is. It's beauty in the eye of the beholder. Again,
Mhm.
we're warriors with our thumbs, and it's all images. And the images are filtered, and they're AI driven and everything else. Look somebody in the eyes. See them
Mhm.
in front of you. See your reflection in their eyes and how much they love you, and just continue to communicate over and over and over again, even if it's ad nauseum. But silence, oh, it's such a killer. It absolutely is. We need to talk. We need to talk. We need to express ourselves. We need to express how we feel, and we need to express how we feel about the other person. Let them
Mhm.
hear it, even if they've already heard it before. I'll tell you this, another great secret. I love this. If you want, again, I apologize, but I'm going to stick with this because it's a great example. I loved my husband got a red T-shirt one time. Don't ask me where he got it from, whatever. But he never wears red.
Mhm.
But he got a red T-shirt and he put it on. I think it was Manchester United. I think their colors are red and yellow. And my daughter had gotten him a T-shirt, and he had put it on. It was game day and whatnot. And I looked over at him and I said, "Wow, I really like you in red. I really like that T-shirt on you. Really brings out your biceps." And I just said it out loud. It wasn't for any intensive purpose. It took my breath away for a moment, and I expressed it. I said it rather than inside my head. Well, my husband went out the next day, and boy, suddenly he had a lot of red t-shirts. He was suddenly wearing red t-shirts everywhere. Why? Because I had inadvertently boosted his confidence. I had become the caretaker of his confidence, and he felt good. What's wrong with that? As partners, what's wrong with saying how you feel about your partner and having them feel good about that? Share it. Absolutely. You might think, oh, that's kind of silly. No, it's not silly. We want to hear those things. Women want to hear that you notice that we got our hair cut, that we got our nails done, that we're wearing something new, and women graciously take the compliment, you know. And this was a hard lesson for me. I would be, in sweatpants and a t-shirt, my hair in a bun or something, and I'd be doing the dishes or whatnot. My husband would say, wow, you look great. And I'd be like, really? This, type of thing. And I wouldn't take the compliment. Women take the compliment. Men take the compliment because at times it's so hard for other partners to express that because they're used to it. They're like, oh, we've been together 15, 20, 25, 30 years. You know how I feel. And my husband used to say that, that I love you. Okay, but I'd like to hear it. Sometimes auditory, it's so good. Sometimes visual, seeing the words I love you handwritten out. Yeah, I know we say it on text again with our warrior thumbs, but something about handwriting, something about hearing it. Yes, call your partner. I know that we don't call each other often anymore because we have text. We're thumb warriors, but call, leave a message. I love you. Beautiful words.
You mentioned something about silence, and I want to touch on this before we move too far away from this. All right, do you hear an echo from me? Because I have an echo on my side. Let me see. Maybe it'll go away. I don't hear it anymore. So silence. If we have something to say and we don't say it, man, that really leads to resentment. Like that can build up. You hear these little examples about the, a dishwasher or something, or to use your example about the garbage or something. Like, it's usually not even about that. It's about something that maybe we happened 3 days ago that we're not sharing that really bothered us. And then, we're either it bothered us and then it also bothered us that our partner didn't notice that it bothered us. And so it's just a spiral thing. And this is why, and when I say this, I'm not saying that, in the heat of the argument is when you should try to handle it. I'm not saying that. I mean, if you need to take time to process or think, by all means do so. But I'm saying if you don't express what it is, I think we all have a limit that we can only take so much of that before, a very minor thing that is really insignificant and has no meaning whatsoever, blows this whole thing out of proportion. So I think it's important, with this silent. I mean, there's certainly times to be silent. Like I said, I don't think an argument can be handled, when everybody's mad or upset or anything. I mean, you have to kind of, take time to just decompress. But I guess that happens after you're no longer silent. If you say something and then it starts the argument, then the silence is kind of out at that point. But I just think it's important. Because I don't think a lot of people, I think it just in general, it's hard for us to have difficult conversations, especially with our partner, especially with somebody that we're spend a lot of our time with. We don't want to have, I don't know. It's just those difficult conversations I feel like they're just difficult for us to have. And I think what we think is that we're making it easier on ourselves by not, but I don't know. Sometimes they just, So you mentioned something earlier that I want to go back to because I really want to get your thoughts on this because I think this is a really big thing. You mentioned like when we have problems with relationships, going outside of the relationship for advice or for, the answer to the problems or whatever it might be. And I understand, venting, talking to friends and that kind of thing. But at the same time, and I've always said this, the way you solve the problems with your relationship should be solved within your relationship. I think it's different, venting to a friend or something, and then that friend giving you advice for a relationship that is not theirs, and then you applying that advice, as if it's going to fit. And so I don't know. I feel like when I say that, a lot of times people kind of get the wrong impression. But from what you're saying is, we should not, necessarily seek advice from outside sources like that are just, I mean, I guess it's different if you're talking to a therapist or something like that, because that person has they're trying to help you figure this thing out. But if you're just taking advice from another person, I mean, we've already talked about some things might not even work in your relationship that do work for other people. So the advice they give you, is it even going to work for you? And also, this is another big point too about this. The person that is giving this advice, their relationship or love life, is that a relationship that you want for yourself? Are we talking about the person who consistently does not have a long-term relationship and we're taking relationship advice from them? Well, maybe that's not a good idea. I mean, are we talking about the person who's been married for, 50 plus years and they're completely happy? And because this is different, this is different. We're talking about different things here. Just like you wouldn't go to a, a plumber and ask for surgical advice. I mean, we're talking about different things here. So I just wanted to touch on that too, because that reminded me of that. And I think that's something that happens a lot. It happens a lot that we talk to friends or, gosh, it feels like families sometimes are in some of these people's stories, families could be the worst, as far as what the families say and that kind of thing. But yeah, I just wanted to ask your thoughts on that. I wanted to bring that up because you touched on it earlier. I don't think we went too deep into it.
Yeah, it's tough. It's definitely tough when we're hurting
Mm-hmm.
and we want validation and we want understanding and we want answers. Oh, we so desperately want answers. We want to understand why this is happening to us.
Mm-hmm.
And we struggle with it. And sometimes what it is we just gravitate to answers that make us feel better. They might not be the right answer, again, right or wrong, but they could be something that relieves us and allows us to have that moment. I'll give you another example. I had a client whose husband had cheated physically, and he kept telling her that it just didn't matter. It didn't matter. He doesn't even know the woman's name. It wasn't a pursuit. It was just easy, and now, now they're suffering through this experience and whatnot. And I had mentioned to her, because she was really sitting in this story. She was sitting in this story of, how could he do this to me? How could he meet a woman and just have sex with her? And just, she was in it so deep. And I asked her a question. And again, I'll mention this. And again, this is everybody's personal thing. I asked how she felt about masturbation. Does her husband do it? Is she comfortable with that? And she's like, oh yeah, no, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. But this isn't that. He had sex with another woman. And I said, well, what if he was masturbating with a partner? And she paused, and I saw the wheels turn.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it. That was her moment of, it wasn't about love. It almost wasn't even about lust. It wasn't even about the other person. It was masturbation with a partner. And that was a weight that was lifted off her shoulders, because again, she was so in the story of him having sex with another person. And once we could reframe it, and again, not an excuse. We're not talking about excuses. We're talking about how we see the story, how we see it. If we can pivot it ever so slightly so that our angst isn't suffocating us, then we have the opportunity of being able to see it for exactly what it is. Because we have these movies in our mind that start playing, and suddenly, it was romantic, and he stripped off her clothing, and he bought her a rose, and he kissed her neck, and and suddenly it becomes this really big romantic type of movie, rather than, could it be masturbation with a partner?
Right.
And sometimes it's that pivot that we need to be able to see things ever so differently. And again, that was the case for me. You know, my husband said 3 words. I've met someone, and in an instant, in an instant, the movie played, you know, fast forward to him marrying somebody else and him having kids with somebody else and him this and then and falling in love and getting her this and blah, blah, blah. And it went so quickly in my mind. Whereas going through therapy and going through the process, when we got to that pivotal moment of, yeah, I've met someone, but I haven't had, you know, I didn't have contact with her. She was emotional for me. She made me feel good. Could it have led to that? Yes, but that's not what I wanted. I wanted you, but I was not in a position to hear that. I couldn't hear that. I couldn't see it because in my mind, I had already had them married, you know, and me left out on the curb, you know, type of thing.
Right.
But that's the movie in my mind. That's not reality.
So you're bringing up such a good point right here. And this is something else that I want to say. Just, I didn't know if I was going to bring this up or not in this conversation, but I think if I'm going to, this is probably a good time to. And this will, without a doubt, piss some people off. But I think that, you know, a lot of women, and I don't mean to generalize here. I'm saying a lot, not all, but I think a lot of women, when they are, you know, betrayed physically by their male partner, they think of, just from my understanding on the outside looking in, they think of, how could you do this to me? You know, how could you do this? How could you do this to me? I think from a man's perspective, when his female partner betrays him, he thinks, how could you do this with him? How could you do this with the male? And, you know, this is such an important thing to note here. And I'm absolutely not saying that one gender is worse than the other gender betrayal. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is how we perceive it as males and how females perceive it is different. And I think, to use your example, I'll just pick on the men, you know, here for a little bit. For most men, it's just easier for them to have a sexual relationship with a woman, because I think most men, you know, but this is an issue for most men, is from what I hear anyways, from, you know, relationship coaches and things like that, is that a lot of women that have their male partners in therapy, a problem is the male in the relationship has an issue emotionally connecting to the woman. Like the woman feels like there's an emotional connection issue. And I've had relationship coaches tell me that this is a common theme that women have. And so I think what it seems like is it might be easier for some, not all, of these men who commit this betrayal to do so in a way that has, you know, zero emotion attached to it. Now, that doesn't make it right or okay or any less severe if a woman does it. But I think the way a man sees it is, and again, this depends on the relationship, depends on the woman. He sees it as he knows what it takes for his woman to open up sexually to another man. Usually that involves a decent amount of emotional attraction to this person. And so again, I'm not saying that, you know, it's worse for a woman to cheat versus a man. I'm not saying that, because it's relative to the person. Either way, the person who is betrayed has been hurt from it. And that's the important part. It doesn't matter. I mean, it does matter, but it doesn't matter how it was hurt. But each person is hurt. That's the point. The point is, I think it's a different sort of experience for the two, if I'm making sense here. And again, this is another thing that I think is a really contentious issue, because when you say this, people say, well, oh, so what you're saying is it's not that bad for a man to cheat on a woman as a woman to cheat. No, I'm not saying that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the experience is different, because we know, like a lot of men spend a very large portion of their mental and physical and even financial resources to court a woman to the point where she will be attracted enough to have that relationship with them. So this is just it's just a valuable thing. And maybe I should stop there, because I don't want to dig a really deep hole here, but I'm just saying the experience and the perception of the experience is different, you know, to relate to your story.
Yes, no, you're absolutely right on that. And while the statistics, and we'll get into statistics, are getting to the point where it's almost getting equal, that the amount of women that cheat versus the amount of men that cheat. Yes, 20, 30 years ago, more men cheated than women cheated. But now we're getting closer and closer to each other, meaning that the same amount of men, same amount of women. There is a wonderful website. And if you're, into statistics, you're going to love this one. It is called the truthaboutdeception.org. And it has been in existence, I want to say, about 12 years now. And it's an anonymous, you go in anonymously and you fill out a questionnaire about cheating, why you did it, male, female, why you did it, so forth and so on. So some of the interesting statistics, and it touches on your point, is that there are more women that have an emotional reason, component for cheating than men. So more women cheat emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
More men cheat physically.
Mm-hmm.
So top reason for women is emotional needs and then physical needs. For men, physical needs, then emotional needs. So that was interesting. The statistic that jumped out at me that I really had to digest, I really needed to think about it, because I was like, what exactly is this saying? With that being said, when men cheat, 22% of this pool, and this pool is now up to 95,000 responses.
Wow.
When men cheat, 22% of the men that responded cheat with somebody that they both know, that both partners know. Okay, 22% of the time. So that means that 78% of the time it's with a stranger.
Right.
Okay, it's with a stranger or somebody that just the man knows. The wife doesn't know. Here's the curious part. Women of this poll, when they cheat, 44% both partners know. What does that mean? That means other men in your circle are watching your wife. They're seeing what your wife is, quote, missing. And whether the man swoops in to try to fill that need, or the woman pulls the man in for that emotional need. Yes. So we need to pay attention to our relationship and those that are around us. And I'm not saying this is a cautionary tale to suddenly exclude yourself from all your friends and your family, all your friends and your circles, but keep an eye out for that. Notice if your partner is suddenly paying a little bit of attention to the other people in your orbit, and keep that in mind. So it speaks to what you just spoke about. The other thing I want to comment on is we're circling back to communication. Listen, relationships and communication, everything in life. With betrayal, you can either take two different roads. It can be easy now, hard later, or it can be hard now, easy later. Which do you want? Yeah, tackle the hard stuff.
Right.
Tackle it hard. Yes, it is going to be challenging. It is going to be difficult. Of course it is. But you can do this. You can absolutely get through to the other side of betrayal. And you can have a loving, responsible relationship, whether that's with your existing partner or a new partner. Because again, we all need love. We absolutely need love. We need a relationship. We need to decide whether that relationship is the existing relationship rebuilt from the ground up after betrayal, or we need a new relationship where we individually are rebuilt from the ground up. Because you don't want to walk into a new relationship or even your existing relationship with all this baggage. And that's what it is. It's baggage, it's hurt, it's pain, because the betrayed partner takes in all of those emotions into their body, and their body becomes the coffin for all of that. No. We got to start shedding it. We do. Does it take time? Yes. My number one question that I get asked most often on Instagram or within one of the Facebook groups that I'm a moderator, How long does it take to heal? This is a good question. How long does it take? It's as if you could type into Google, I've been married this number of years. This is how long the affair or the betrayal was going on. This is how much money I have in the bank. This is the job I have. This is my zip code. This is how many cars I have. And it goes 87 days. It doesn't work like that. I'm sorry to say that. You have to have, in order to get through betrayal, the first thing you need is willingness. You have to have a willingness to actually do the work. And it is hard work, because if you don't do any work, then you're standing still. You don't want to stand still. You don't want to stay in that cesspool of just hurt and angst and everything else, because with betrayal, it's a situation. Viktor Frankl said it best. He was a Holocaust survivor. He wrote the book, Man's Search for Meaning. And he said it best. This is a quote that I loved in high school. And I still carry it around today, that when we are no longer able to change a situation, we cannot change the betrayal. We are challenged to change ourselves. Yes, you're going to need to do the work. You're going to need to do the work. But doing the work and having the willingness to do the work, you will get through to the other side. It's glorious over here. It absolutely is. And I look forward to seeing as many people get through to the other side.
So we'll definitely come back to that, because I definitely want to talk about getting over betrayal. Let me backtrack just for a second. I still have this echo going on. Hang on just a second. Let me stop this video and start another one. Hang on just a minute.
Sure.
Okay, so we were talking about, you mentioned earlier about, how there might be people in your space, kind of looking at your woman, see what she's missing or whatever. I've said some things earlier about, this online, putting yourself online as a woman, and this validation that comes from online. I just want to be clear that I'm not saying eliminate the competition, because I think, and I can't speak about this from a woman's angle, but I think from a man's perspective, it should be considered healthy that there is quote unquote competition out there for your woman, because that should motivate you to provide what your woman needs when you know that there are these options, out there. I'm not saying whatsoever in any way, shape, or form to eliminate the competition, because I think men should be aware of the fact that if they're not doing something that needs to be done, there is somebody out there who will. And so I just wanted to make that point before we kind of moved on from that. I think healthy might not be the right word, because I guess people have different opinions about this sort of competition, for lack of a better word. But I think that I personally think to me, I see it as something that's healthy. It's not something that intimidates me or that I'm concerned about or whatever. It's just something to be aware of, I think. And again, I guess that's a perspective thing. That's probably, subjective or, to the person and relative to the person.
Okay, so let's pull on that thread a little bit. Yeah, yes, I agree to some extent, but isn't that always the case? Even if we weren't on social media, somebody's paying attention. Somebody's looking at your wife, or somebody's looking at your husband. We interact with each other, with other humans all day long, whether that's on the phone and somebody hears your voice and whatnot. It's participation in it, the level of participation. And that's why, like we talked about micro cheating, which could be just innocent flirtation. And again, you'll notice that I word innocent flirtation. Is it innocent or is it not? My husband and I always joke that when we go out to eat, if we have a waiter, the waiter pays attention to me. He just does. We could have water on the table and he will come and fill my water glass. He won't fill my husband's water glass, and my husband will be like, like I'm choking. I have no water, like pay attention to me type of thing. And then we see the opposite when we go out to eat and there's a woman, who's the waitress. Yeah, she might put her chest in my husband's face, not literally, but yeah, she's bucking for a tip, a good tip. So she pays attention to him. It's his level of participation going back to her. It's my level of participation with the waiter. I don't even notice that he's filled my glass and not filled my husband's glass, but my husband has.
Right.
And then the opposite happens, that when the woman comes, the waitress comes to the table, I pay attention almost immediately. I mean, I'm perked up, and I'm paying attention. And usually what happens is, because of what I do, is I engage with both of them. I engage with the wait staff all the time. How are you? I look at them. How are you? How are things going? That's my level of participation. My husband, on the other hand, before betrayal, would participate in just being what I referred to as friendly before betrayal. Now, after betrayal, I see it as flirting.
Right.
Same exact action, but now I have a filter because of my experience and my interaction with my husband. No, I don't want him flirting with the waitress, whereas before it was different. And again, we have before betrayal and after betrayal. And I think a lot about that scenario, that if I chose to walk away from my marriage and engage in a new relationship, would I feel the exact same way when the waitress came over to the table? Would I feel like my partner, if he did the exact same engagement, would I feel that he was flirting? Yes, I would. Why? Because I've gone through betrayal. And I can actually see it now because I'm so engrossed in this space. I can see it when I view other couples. I can see which one has a little bit of angst because of something that had happened in the past, whether it's betrayal or something of that nature. But again, it comes down to communication. I communicated with my husband and said, hey, listen, I know that you used to love flirting with everybody, and I took it as flirting, but I always felt proud that I was on his arm. He can flirt with you, but he's going home with me,
Right.
type of thing. Now I don't want it at all. I'm like, yeah, keep it friendly, not flirting, difference in the F's, let's be realistic here. So yes, circling back to what you said, yes, we need to pay attention. We need to pay attention, and we need to communicate what we're feeling. And when you have those feelings coming up, and again, kind of think of your body halfway, meaning your lower half of your body is where those emotions, anger, rage, sadness, that's where those are stored. They're usually stored in your stomach. Happiness and joy, oh, that's your heart. That's your throat. That's your smile. That's where those things are. Pay attention to those. Where are you feeling the certain emotions? And talk to your partner. That's the general theme of our entire conversation. Is the most important thing is to communicate and preempt betrayal. If you can preempt betrayal, that's even better. Talk, say what's going on. And if your partner doesn't hear it, say it a different way. Enlist the help of somebody else, whether that's clergy or rabbi or priest or somebody that you both really admire, and a mentor. Might not necessarily be family member. Again, you kind of want to keep it under wraps, but even a therapist. You can book a therapist for 3 sessions and say, hey, listen, I just don't feel like I'm being heard. Can we both come and sit down and talk about this one issue that I feel that if we don't resolve, I'm going to look elsewhere for. I don't want to look elsewhere. I want it right here.
So we're talking a lot about, these outside, we're kind of moving away from the 2 people, assuming there's just 2 people in the relationship, and kind of moving outside of that to other people, around. Do you have any expertise, or like with your clients or anything? Have you come across a reason why people cheat with, so the mistress or the whoever, is there a certain, we talked earlier about the motivating factor for the partner, but I mean, assuming that the person they're cheating with knows there's a relationship, is there something in your expertise that's kind of driving them? I mean, other than, I don't know what, I can't even imagine if a person knows the person they're communicating with is in a committed monogamous relationship and they continue to pursue this thing just out of, maybe the people you've talked to, their stories that you've heard. Is there something to kind of pinpoint with those people? I mean, I don't know.
It's a really good question. Yeah, this is a tough one because you really get into the perspective of the mistress. What is their motivation for doing what they're doing?
Mm-hmm.
Or the man's motivation for doing what he's doing. He knows that this is his best friend's wife. Why is he doing this? She knows that, it's getting into their psyche as to why they're doing it. That is not my area of expertise at all. I know that there are several wonderful coaches out there that specifically delve into this psyche of this phenomenon that happens of why pursue somebody that is married. That's the caveat right here. What I deal with is those that don't know. Okay. And sometimes that comes into play. I didn't realize because they feel betrayed.
Right.
They felt, they were on a dating website. They saw somebody that was intriguing. They had a date. They had a second date. They had a third date. Now the woman is falling in love. She's getting that intoxication. She feels like he has that intoxication. And then she finds out he's married. And it's like, whoa. Or he lied to her initially and said, I'm going through a divorce, type of thing. He is the betrayer to his wife, but he's also betraying the affair partner who doesn't know that she's the affair partner. So she feels betrayed as well. One man, two women. Could be the opposite as well. Again, we're speaking in general terms. But that happens as well, where the mistress, the affair partner, is completely blindsided as well and doesn't recognize or realize that they, in fact, are. And that's a very bitter pill to swallow from the female perspective. And that's what I speak to. Most of my clients have found themselves in that situation where they discover that they're the affair partner and they didn't realize that. And they break off the relationship because it's not what they want. They don't want to be second choice. They also don't want to destroy somebody else's family because they and this I like this mindset. I don't know quite whether it's right or wrong. I haven't done enough research on it, but this mindset from a woman's perspective that if he cheats on his wife to be with me, what's to say he doesn't cheat on me with someone else? Mm-hmm. And to get into that frame of reference of not once a cheater, always a cheater, because I don't subscribe to that. I don't. I know a lot of people do. But again, when you're faced with that situation where you discover that you're the affair partner, you're almost betrayed twice because you betrayed another woman that you don't even know. You're not even aware of it. And that causes a lot of emotions going through you.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Because I would imagine, if you're on the other side of that and you didn't realize that this was a, person was in a relationship or whatever, I can imagine that's a whole nother form of betrayal. So here's the $1 million question. How do we get over this? So two parts to this question. How do we get over betrayal? And then how do we, assuming, well, I guess I maybe the answer is different. If we continue to stay with this person or if we pursue another relationship, how do we kind of not take that with us? Because you hear a lot of people who, especially who have been through betrayal in the past, it seems like they almost, I don't want to say carry it with them, but it's like the next relationship they go into or the one that they're kind of still in, they kind of see things differently, So in other words, if they go into a new relationship, the new person's phone rings or something late at night and they just automatically assume that it's, something bad. So how, I guess maybe that's kind of the 2-part question. How do we get over this? And then whether people stay or not stay, how do they, kind of not take it with them, I guess is the question.
Mm-hmm. Great question. Great double question. How to get over it. Take your time. Be gentle with yourself. Focus on yourself first. regain that self-trust, because you need to trust yourself again, and your self-love, because it's literally destroyed. It absolutely is. And before you can even engage in the relationship, whether that's a new relationship or the existing relationship, you really need to work on yourself. You really, really do. And it's step by step, incremental steps. You can't run a marathon because you buy a pair of shoes. It doesn't work that way. You know, you really need to take it step by step and be gentle with yourself and slow down. Sometimes we're just so eager to get through the pain. We don't want to feel it anymore. And I understand that, but you can't jump over it. You can't bypass it. You can't go under it. You have to go through it. You absolutely do. But you will be stronger for going through the experience. You absolutely will. You will no longer have blinders on. Those red flags that you mentioned early on in the conversation, how we kind of ignore those red flags during the initial intoxication. Well, after you've gone through betrayal, yeah, you see those red flags. But now you have the communication skills to talk about that and say, hey, listen, this is a concern of mine. You being on TikTok all the time, I'm not comfortable with. Are you willing to let that go? Because if you're not willing to let that go, I need to step out. Because again, boundaries are not about controlling somebody else's actions. Boundaries are defining what you will do if this happens. That's what it is. So, for example, in my relationship, my husband knows that he broke my heart. He knows it. He takes 100% responsibility for it. He knows that. He knows that in a heartbeat, that if it happens again, I'm out. There's no explanation, no excuses, no nothing. I'm out. That's my boundary. That's it. I've stated it. I've said exactly what I'm going to do. If you do this, I will do this. Not if you do this, do this, do this, don't do this, do that, do this. No. Again, the boundary is action, my action, what I'm going to do. So do keep that in mind. So how to get over it? Be gentle with yourself. Take your time. Really get to know yourself. You step into yourself, because for so long you were pretty much everything to everyone else. You were an image of what you thought other people wanted you to be. Now it's time to actually stand in your own 2 feet as yourself and really get to know yourself. Because you're amazing. You absolutely are. And you don't know it because you feel so broken and whatnot, but you rebuild better than before. It's glorious. And then how not to take the baggage. This is a tough one because you will still get triggered. I still get triggered. Yes, I'm so many years removed, and yes, I will still get triggered. And what is a trigger? It's an old hurt trying to reinsert itself. You need to decide whether you're going to accept that trigger and the time duration moving forward. And now there will be something that'll hit me and I'll be like, oh, yeah, no, I don't like the way that makes me feel. And either I will express it right then and there to my husband, I felt, I'm feeling, or I'll squash the nasty chick voice on my shoulder who goes, oh, you see what he did? Hold on. Let's take this in perspective. Let's slow it down. Let's respond rather than reacting. Let's actually see it for what it is, not for the movie that's going on in our mind where we've like gone, 10 years into the future in a split second. Let's slow down. Let's absolutely slow down and let's really see what's happening around us. So in terms of baggage, yes, initially you have a whole house. You have a whole house, lots and lots and lots of boxes. And then eventually you keep moving from stage to stage, and suddenly a couple of boxes drop off that moving van. And then the next time you move, a couple more boxes, and then a couple more boxes, and then you put the boxes in the attic. They're still there because you kind of want to hang on to them just in case. kind of thing. You want to kind of revisit that feeling. And then eventually they kind of move downstairs. Then they move out onto the porch. They're still kind of there, but you can still close the door on them. And then eventually they go out into the yard. They get rained on. They get saturated, and then they move out to the curb for the garbage men to come collect. It takes a while. Don't rush the process, but at the same time, don't live in the pain and the hurt. Incremental steps forward. Keep moving. Keep moving. Yes, there will be times where you take 2 steps forward and 1 step back, but you're still moving forward. And absolutely reach out to a support group, to a therapist, to a specialist, to somebody who has experience with this. My cautionary tale is be careful with the Facebook groups, okay, or any large group, because you'll throw something out and you'll get a litany of responses back. Some will make you feel very validated, like yes, and others will just make you feel like crap. You don't need that. You already have enough to feel like crap. You don't need other people's opinions adding to it and whatnot. Find a nice small support group, couple of women that you resonate with. Not that, again, we want to be careful about misery loving company. We want groups that inspire us, that let us know, I've got you. I've got you. I understand how you feel. Here's a couple of things that worked for me. They might work for you. They might not. You're going to get through this. Sometimes, again, it is the support group or the individual that builds your confidence, to know that, yes, you will get to the point where you will have clarity to make a decision whether to stay or to go in your relationship. And then once you've made that decision, and again, it's not 100%. I'm not saying that once you make that decision, you're locked in and that's it. But at least you start living in that decision. Because for me, in my particular situation, I bounced back and forth, as I mentioned, like a ping pong ball. Yes, I'm going. No, I'm not. Yes, I'm going. No, I'm not. And it was debilitating. But once I made the decision, you know what? I'm going to stay. I'm going to work on my marriage. Now that I've worked on me, I am going to work on my marriage, and we'll see where it goes from there.
That was a beautiful answer. I really appreciate that. I am going to have to wrap up in a few minutes. Where can people find you if they need to reach out or want to follow your content or, possibly work with you?
Thank you for the question. Well, first and foremost is my website. A ton of resources on there for you. Blogs, resources, you name it, it's on there. I've poured my heart and soul into my website. It's got a lot of my information on there as well. My URL is understandingear.com. It comes from a Stephen King book. His short story called The Body. It starts with a very long quote, and I've condensed it. The most important things to say are the hardest things to say, not for the want of a teller, but for the want of an understanding ear. And when I decided that to put myself out there, because you have to keep in mind, for me personally, I kept it under wraps. I kept my betrayal under wraps for years. Family didn't know about it. My coworkers didn't know about it. And then when I came out after all of my studies and decided, you know what, I'm going to do this on a bigger scale. For the most part, I was the best kept secret in my area, because I host a small support group and whatnot, and have, several people reach out to me that way. But when I decided to go big and develop a website to pour my heart and soul into, I thought of understanding ear. And I thought for sure I'd have to wrestle that away from somebody. And sure enough, it was available. And I knew it was meant to be. And now I'm so ridiculously proud of my website and the compliments that I get on it for actually providing helpful information, not just fluff. I really dig deep into it. So if you want to remain anonymous, if you don't want to interact, you can just go on my website and find all of the resources for you there. They're all there for you. The difficulty in going through it alone is the implementation of certain things. And working with me one-on-one or in a group setting allows for that implementation to happen, to accelerate the healing process so that you don't get stuck. Because that's what happens. A lot of people get stuck in that hurt. And I just want to move people through. And one of the things that I did was I developed a book, which is dealing with the devastation of your partner's betrayal. It's available on Amazon. It was not designed for commercial or academic success. Not at all. It's a guidebook, and it's not a self-help book. It's a help others book. It's my almost gift to anybody going through betrayal, because as I mentioned, when I went through betrayal, I wanted to get my hands on everything. And I read so many great books, but I was lost in them. Because when you're going through the depths of betrayal right at the beginning, the first days and weeks, even months, you can't process information. It's coming at you too fast. You got your friends and your family and everybody, all the blogs and all the Facebook groups and all this information just flooding you. And you're like, I can't handle all of this. My book was designed in bite-sized pieces. All of my chapters are 2-3 pages at the most. My table of contents, just if you want to know about boundaries, it's on this page. If you want to know about this, it's on that page. And you bite-size it. Because what I found was that a lot of programs that I went through as I was going through my betrayal were designed in a way that it was very structured. Week 2, we're going to talk about this. Week 4, we're going to talk about this. Week 6, we're going to talk about this. And my problem was, wait a second, I'm going through triggers. I'm going through debilitating triggers. I need help. Oh, we're not going to get to that until week 6. What do you mean? I need that help now. So I designed my book in that way that you can just pick and choose what you need at that moment in time. Very straightforward. It's not religious based, and it's not scientifically based either. When I was going through, I didn't want to know about all the chemicals and all this and all that. I didn't need to know it from a scientific point of view. I also didn't want it from a religious point of view. I didn't want the shame and the guilt. I just wanted something that I could read by somebody who's going through a similar experience to make me feel better. And every chapter ends with a journal prompt so that when you read the book, hopefully towards the end of the day, the last thing you read is something uplifting, and that you go to sleep with that on your mind rather than the merry-go-round or the movie in your mind that just is on replay, and just to be encouraging. And I'm ridiculously proud of that too. So yes, thank you.
I think you should be. I think you should be proud. First of all, that's a very intelligent way to design the book. I think that was a very intelligent way to do that. Do you mind if I call you Vanessa? Is that okay?
Of course. Of course.
Okay. So,
absolutely, Cody.
So Vanessa, one thing I want to say, and I don't say this to flatter you. I don't say this to do anything along those lines, but the logo for this podcast is a rising phoenix. I don't know if you can see it. You probably can't see much of it. I have a rising phoenix tattoo on my shoulder. And I think that, that a lot of times when we go through adversity, we have the opportunity to come out better and stronger and wiser. And, for you to experience something like this and come out a better person and try to help people who are in the situation. I think that it is that type of mentality that we need to, just become the best people and the best civilization that we can be. I mean, I think it's that kind of mentality that really helps people, because there's 1,000 negative ways to handle betrayal. I mean, people, eliminate themselves off the planet because of betrayal. And so the way you're doing this, you're kind of taking your own pain and you're kind of teaching other people how to handle this. I just find that incredible. I mean, that is, I find that admirable and incredible. And again, I'm not trying to flatter you. I'm just saying that I think what you're doing here is really going to help people who need it. And like I've talked to people before and said before, with you being in this situation yourself is really going to make a difference because you know what it felt like, what it was like, you know how to relate. And I think when we can relate to people, I mean, that's everything.
Mhm.
That's when somebody can relate to you and see that you can understand what they're feeling and thinking. I think that's everything. And you mentioned that, about your website, you mentioned that you feel like it's meant to be. And I think I mean, nothing else makes sense other than that. I think what you're doing here is really going to help, even if it just helps one person. I mean, if it helps one person, that's the right person. Um, so yeah. So thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for sharing your story. One other question I do want to ask you, and this can be related to the betrayal, relationships, life in general, anything that you're kind of willing to share. I feel like you're a person who would have a lot of answers to this, but if you just kind of want to pinpoint maybe one thing, one lesson that you would say is one of the most important lessons you've ever learned in life, what would you say is one of the most important things you've ever learned, most valuable lessons you've ever learned?
I love the question. For so long, I blended into the background. I just did. I blended into the background. I didn't want, I didn't need to be front and center. I blended in and whatnot. And after I started speaking about betrayal on stage, on podcasts and whatnot, I overheard two women talking, and they were a little, excuse the colorful language, they were a little bitchy, at least to other people around them. They thought they were a little bitchy. They were like, oh, she's so full of herself. And I walked right up and I was like, oh my God, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. And they were flabbergasted. And I was like, you have no idea what that means to me. Yes, I am full of myself. I am full of me. It's me. I am not anybody else. I am not an image of somebody else. I am actually me. And for you to see that and recognize it and say that I am full of me. Oh, and I hugged them both. I was so grateful for that. And other women, like, around, because I was at a women's conference, other women came up to me afterwards and they were like, wow, they were actually bitching about you. And I'm like, I don't take it that way. I don't. I am so incredibly proud of me. And I am so incredibly proud of the work that I do and that I make an impact. And you're absolutely right. One person. Why one person is important is because they trickle out. They
Yep.
trickle out to their friends, their families, their kids. Oh my God, their kids. We don't want generational hurt where generations, 2, 3 generations from now, they remember that betrayal. No, I don't want them to remember the betrayal as something negative. I want them to see the warrior that came out, the phoenix that rose from that experience, and actually take it as a life lesson that, yes, something terrible, terrible can happen to you. It wasn't about you, and you can emerge better for the experience. Oh, absolutely.
Well, I think that definitely resonates in your message. I think that entire philosophy resonates in your message. And incredible answer, by the way. Listen, I could keep talking. I could keep going on and on here. I got to get ready for this other appointment, though. I really appreciate your time today. I really appreciate you coming and sharing this. And like I said, I feel like this is such a, I don't know many things that hurt us more than betrayal. It just there's a certain sting to that that's just so unique. It's not like somebody says something to us, a bully or whatever. I mean, it just has a unique sting to it that I think a lot of people really. There's definitely unhealthy ways to handle it. There's definitely unhealthy ways to process it, but I think what you're doing here is, like I said, I think it's really going to, reach the right people and help the right person, even if it's only one person. So I appreciate what you're doing. Certainly don't give up at it. Certainly don't stop at it. Just keep going because you certainly have a story to tell, and I appreciate you doing that here. And so, So I appreciate your time. Let me stop this video and I'll explain to you the upload process to this and all that good stuff. But I definitely appreciate your time here.
Thank you, Cody.
Hey everybody, listen, I really appreciate you guys tuning in today, man. If you like the content, if you found this episode useful, you can visit us on social media. That's YouTube, TikTok, Spotify, Amazon Music, Rumble, Instagram, Facebook, and Google and Apple Podcasts. There you can like our videos, follow, subscribe, and share. And again, we appreciate it. We'll see you next time.